And away we go.
Good morning, everybody.
Mm.
Welcome to this little conversation around the idea of mysticism. My name is John Schwartz. I'm the Recovery Center manager at the Windham Recovery Community Center up here in Willimantic for CCAR, the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery. I'm also a man in long-term recovery, which for me means I haven't put any of that nonsense in my body since Pearl Harbor Day. Never get bombed again, 2009. And I only say that to say this, that the universe has thrown a number of things at me and has not managed to knock me off my spot. So hooray for the recovery process and all that stuff. I'm also like a great student of all systems, mythological, spiritual, and otherwise, because I've been trying to fix myself for a very long time. And I often fall down some of these rabbit holes, and the one of them that I've fallen down recently is the various systems of mysticism. So we're going to have a little talk about that. And I have the support of one of my key volunteers and ace volunteer recovery coaches, Danielle Solomon. Want to introduce yourself, my friend?
Hey, shalom, everyone. My name is Daniel Solomon. I am a volunteer recovery coach here at the WRCC in Willimantic. I was introduced to recovery just about a couple of years ago by a recovery coach at St. Francis Hospital. And since then, I've going to about celebrate 20 months this March 17th of recovery, thank God, after entering treatment and finding recovery in Yeshua, who some people call Jesus Christ. I love giving back to the community and supporting people either finding recovery or those who are in recovery, helping them maintain it.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. I'd love to just go around the room and just see who's here and what motivates you to be here and what's going on. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hands and sharing in that way, I'd love to hear who you are and what you're doing. Hey, Robbie.
You guys doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, shalom, Robbie.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. My name is Robbie Pomelo. I am the Outreach and Engagement Specialist here at the Jamaica Plain Recovery Center in Boston. Um, I was a peer recovery, well, I was a recovery coach for almost 2 years, and I moved on to the outreach because I realized that I like really getting out and getting the word out about what we're doing because not many people know. I didn't really find out truly until I had one of my own. But what brought me here today, I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I've been, on a soul search since day one of recovery, And so anything this topic related, I want to be at, and especially a free, training from CCAR,
Mhm.
you know. So thank you, and
Cool.
thank you for
Glad
having me.
you're here, man. Glad you're here. Hope you can get something
Thanks.
valuable out of this. Cool.
Welcome, Robbie.
Deb,
Yep. Oh,
you muted
yeah.
yourself to
There we
share.
go. So I'm Deb. I'm basically here. I did some of the trainings with CCAR. So I wanted to stay within it. My goal is at some point, hopefully, to be employed, even if I start with like volunteer work. And I'm in transition. So that's really where I'm at. And what I found is that a lot of the CCAR trainings really work for me. I've gained insight, and because I actually did them, it actually helped me in my transition to not only see things within myself that I wasn't understanding. That would have helped definitely with with the counseling side of it. And then my education. I think one of the biggest things that I really loved about with CCAR, I am a Christian. It's a not an easy road to follow, to be quite honest with you. And I also am very spiritual, so I have a lot of the sense of the spirituality aspect of it. And I need the balance between, between these worlds, being on this journey where my own mishaps are and then giving back. Like that's one of the biggest things. If I don't feel like I'm doing output and have a purpose, I can struggle sometimes because I believe in that so much. That's part of the foundation for me. And that's where I'm at. I'm 60. I'm in transition, and I'm in transition. That's my truth. And so,
You're young.
yeah, being thanks, being a part of this is really truly making a difference. And I just strongly believe that whatever I have, I like to give back to help pull somebody, to pull somebody else up out of the darkness. That's my truth.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Welcome,
And
Deb.
I think the whole the whole idea of finding meaning and purpose is sort of integral to this whole conversation today. So maybe you'll get a little bit of change of perspective or some
Yes.
fresh air anyway, huh? Great. Thanks for
Absolutely.
being here. Michelle, how are you?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to be here and grateful to be here with all of you this morning. I am a recovering alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 1st, 2025. So just over a year now, over 400 days. Very grateful to my higher power. I have followed and practiced the AA program myself, but I know that there are many avenues, and that's what I've been introduced to through CCAR. I have taken all of my classes that I need, and just as of last Thursday, got my certificate to be a professional recovery coach.
Oh, proud of
Yeah,
her.
very excited about that. And through all the classes, and actually, I'm live in the next town over from the Waterbury CCAR, so I've been volunteering there and learning the ins and outs. And my passion has always been about educating. I'm a former health and physical education teacher, so taught about health and wellness. So that is my passion. And again, just always wanting to help others. By helping myself become better, I know I can help others, and that's my role. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks for being
Welcome.
here. And look, yeah, multiple pathways, man. Spokes on the wheel. Spokes on
Yeah.
the wheel. I just want to be free, and I want everyone else to be free, and how they get there is completely immaterial to me, right?
Yes.
Is it Carolyn or Caroline?
It's Caroline. Hi
Good
guys.
morning.
Good morning. So I celebrated 5 years on March 1st.
Woo!
I have been in and out of this program since I was 17. I think I went to my first treatment center, and had a long stint of sobriety, but had a lot of stuff come up in early childhood some trauma that I really truly believe today, all those things that have happened in my life, the going in and out, being a chronic relapser, finding recovery dharma, being in, I do 12 steps. I do many different pathways myself now, but I think that is my superpower. I think that I can use those things that happened to me to, if I can use them to help someone else, then I want to do that. I think that service and helping others is what I'm here to do, and I'm really excited to continue this journey. This is my last 2 hours, so I'm excited to get my certificate. Congratulations on yours. I forget the name. Michelle.
That's
Welcome.
excellent.
Welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm glad you're here, and it's the many paradoxes of recovery, right? Give it away to keep it. Your greatest weakness turns into your greatest strength, right? We find our meaning and purpose there. It's like all of that stuff, it's like fall down 7 times, get up 8. Like the things that you learn in that process of falling down and getting up is absolutely indispensable to someone else in their desire and effort to do the same thing. So hooray for you. And I'm glad you want to give back in that way. And I have to say that like service, besides my children, like service is the great joy of my life. So just
Yes.
know that. Christy, good morning.
Hey everybody. So hi, I'm Christy. I am a Serpa over here in Norwich, New York. I work at the Turning Point of Shenango County. We are actually an outpatient facility helping people in active addiction. I've been here for 2 years now. I myself will have 5 years on April 9th, sober and clean off heroin. Yay, I can't
Yeah.
wait. It'll be my
Yeah.
first time having a
Wow.
long stint of recovery, so praise God. I will say that this is my first time working in an office setting, let alone a recovery-based environment. And I mean, besides giving it all to God, I wouldn't have been gotten this far if it weren't for the CCAR trainings, for Oasis trainings, for the community, for the people that come in and out of these doors. I love being here and I love doing what I do. I learn more from the people that come in and sit in the chair right next to me than I did every other day. I mean, I worked in construction, I worked as a waitress, I did, call centers, and I was just like, drolling through life, and it was just going nowhere, but now I feel like I'm actually living my life, and it's actually, I don't know, I feel successful, and even if
Mm.
this might not be the right job, I know I'm going in the right direction, so I'm very grateful to actually be here, and I'm very spiritual as well. I'm also a Christian, so I'm very glad to be here and hear what everyone else has to say too. So thank you.
Well, thanks for being
Welcome.
here. You're absolutely reading my mail. I mean, like it's like this place saves my life every day. It really does. Like the degree of courage and vulnerability that I see people display on a daily basis just encourages me to do the same. They say, and there's this great book by Henry Nouwen that says that that the healer of today is someone who's so familiar with their own brand of emotional pain that they can articulate it in a way that gives permission for everyone else to do the same. And I think that's the important lesson that we learn being in an environment like this, right? That's where the key is. That's where the connection is, right? Anyway, thank you. Thanks for being here. Anybody else want to introduce yourselves before we get going here? How about who do we have over in Windham? There's Portia's here. Let's let Portia introduce herself. Can somebody can you unmute that to introduce yourself? Or just stick your head in here and do it from here? They're in the next room.
There we go.
There you go. This is pushing the easy button right here.
Hello, everyone. Grand Rising. I am truly grateful to be here. As I was sitting here listening to each and every one of you, I was saying to myself, I am so grateful and blessed that I have great leaders of their experience, strength, and hope, that they have me under their wing. They have facilitated and given me a great hope, because I have the desire not to use clean date December 11th, 2024, humbly in the process. And why I speak of humble is not a verbal, it's an action and a process that I'm in. And I'm just put one foot in front of the other. I have passion for people. I want everyone to get it in the world. And I know it takes one person to help a whole village, and a village to help that one person. And within, it's an inside job. And I'm just grateful for all the collective information that I've gathered in my spirit. The force has helped me. It's phenomenal. Epiphany. Using one day, not using, and these days have rolled on. And whoo, here it is.
Thanks for being here, kid.
Welcome,
Good to see you.
Portia.
Always good to see you.
Yes.
That's how we do over here in Willimantic. We're just pulling people in the office to introduce themselves. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean? How about over in Danbury? You guys want to unmute and introduce yourselves? I don't know why I'm yelling. I'm sure you can hear me. You got it? Did you figure it out?
Hello. Good morning.
Here they are.
There we go.
I'll start the introductions. I don't know where we're at.
Go for it.
My name is Akira, and I'm an intern at WestCon. My major is social work, and I am here to empower all of you.
There we go.
All right.
I'll go.
There we go.
I'll go. Hi guys, I'm Dana.
Hi.
I am a volunteer recovery coach. I am here today because I am actually between jobs right now, and I'm on a slippery slope mentally. So I come here because it's better than the alternative. And while I have all this free time, I'm learning how to be a better recovery coach.
There we
So
go.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're there. I hope you're getting the support you need over there. I know Rob and
Yeah.
Brian are great, so you
Here's
should
the
be all
bell.
right.
Good morning, my name is Debbie.
Hello.
I'm a volunteer recovery coach. And
Welcome.
So happy to see you. So happy to be here. We're on the list of wake up this morning from our higher power. So that's a blessing in itself.
Amen.
Um,
Yes.
I usually don't count days, but I am proud to say that I've been close to 17 months sober. And
Congratulations.
all of it goes to God first and then CCAR. CCAR has saved my life. And it's just a wonderful thing to be able to meet people because I'm kind of a loner. So I'm starting again to know how to socialize, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm happy to see all you beautiful people.
Awesome.
Well, we love
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. That's great. I'm glad you guys are here.
Thank
Anybody else in Danbury before we move it along?
Hi, I'm Baz. I'm here as a volunteer recovery for addiction, and I'm happy to listen to your words of encouragement. And I'm also here as part of empowerment to empower people to recover psychologically, emotionally. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hello,
Thank you. Thank you very
welcome.
much. Thanks so much for being here. Cool. All right, keep it moving. Anybody else want to introduce themselves? I can't keep track of who has and who hasn't at this point, so you're gonna have to help me. David.
Caroline. Hi, I'm Caroline.
A little bit late.
Hi, Caroline.
Oh, good. Like Caroline. Hi, Caroline.
Hi. And I really loved everybody sharing about their personal connection to their higher power. I think it's really beautiful. So
Welcome.
Cool. Thanks for being here. It's
Yes.
gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. All right, now David, I think we're clear.
All good. Sorry, my higher power kept me in meditation a little longer than I was expecting this
Okay.
You know, I'm Colorado. I did my training last spring. I do these courses to improve and continue to grow my experience that I can share with the people that I work with, which right now I'm involved with 12 groups, but none of it's being paid, and all of it's mostly, balancing my needs versus sharing with other people. And boy, mysticism, it's been part of my life since I was very young. I ignored it for, well, I didn't ignore it. I poked it for about 45 years until I woke up again. And yeah, difference between now and then is about sometime in October. Um, I finally surrendered. And it was interesting. My real mother told me when I was in my 20s, she didn't say when, she didn't say if, she said when you get there, your hardest thing to do is going to be to surrender. Um, I've done my fourth step in a variety of different things, and I am an arrogant asshole, and I think I know it all, and I've got a better idea. And I'll tell you, in October, when I opened my arms up, I looked up in the sky and said, I surrender.
Hey. Ooh.
Everything, it is unbelievable the pearls that I receive every single day. And I can tell you before that, I would see them here and there, and I couldn't connect, and it wasn't listening to me, and I couldn't hear it, and holy wow. So glad to be here.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here. That's powerful, man. That's powerful. And yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how liberating it is to like not have to control everything. That was one of the things that really shocked me. Like,
I quit my job for 4 years right after I bought a house. And I have been in hardcore recovery for 4 years. I do 12 groups a week, I can't even tell you how much I've read. I did this program, I've done an intensive, and I that process of letting go, it is not easy at all, but it is liberating. And the crazy thing is, it's like I'm like trying to either sell my house or keep my house. I'm trying to find a job. I'm kind of letting my higher power take me there. And I got three job opportunities through connections, through this stuff. And I'm like, why do I struggle with this anymore? Just let go. And if you're aware, before recovery, I was closed down, I was numb, I was in ignorance, and I didn't think I needed, I could do it on my own. But when that awareness happens and you let go and you truly surrender, it's crazy what happens. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I'm glad you're here, David. It's good to see you.
Welcome, David.
Judy.
Hi, everybody, and I'll be quick. My name is Judy. I work at Greenfield Community College in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Um, we had 3 snow days last week, so my meetings are completely messed up, and I'm going to have to leave a little early today. And I was really looking forward to this. But I assume we're saying why we're here. I basically signed up for this particular workshop because even before I got into recovery in 2009, I've always been obsessed with the concept of how people find meaning, what makes people get out of bed in the morning. And I find it both interesting from a research perspective as a college administrator, but also from a social emotional perspective. And I think it's starting to be significantly neglected in higher education as we move toward online learning and quicker credentials. We're forgetting about the soul. And so I'm here to learn and talk about that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think some of us have to be the champions for that sort of development of the soul because
Exhausting.
we're gonna be taken over by robots any minute. So
Exactly.
we should definitely try and flesh that out. But thanks for being here. Thank you so much for being here.
you.
Priscilla?
Good morning. My name is Priscilla Schaefer, and I am a recovery coach professional here in West Michigan and facilitate trainings here in West Michigan. And appreciate getting to attend this webinar. So I know how I say it for myself is, how did I get here? I know how I got here. I know that things happen along the way, but it's always good to have a refresher of or enhancement, I should say, for myself. Why am I here? The meaning and purpose. I know what happened and how I got here. And, so all those things in life make me, I guess, knowledgeable in those life experiences, how I can be to service to others. But, why am I here? So when I saw this, I was like energized. So appreciate this opportunity. So have a grand day wherever you are.
Cool.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks for being here, Priscilla. And look, I've heard addiction described as a constant state of lack, right? There's something missing there. I don't know what it is, but there's some intangible thing missing. And a lot of the times it's purpose. A lot of the times it's purpose. I've been so busy doing what I've been doing for however long I've been doing it with, like keeping all the like a juggler with the 17 balls in the air, like trying to keep the habit going, trying to keep the creditors at bay, the dealer at bay, the employer at bay, all of that stuff. I've lost myself in this whole thing, right? And suddenly I find myself wanting to start on a new basis and just something is missing. I always describe myself as the person who thought that he didn't get the instructions, to life. And it's really like I was missing purpose. I was missing meaning in my life, and the odd thing is that this affliction, right? This affliction that I came down with, like forced me to find my purpose. So there it is. So let's get this thing started. I know we didn't hear from everybody, but if anybody wants to put anything else in the chat, they can do that. But let's get this going. So so the idea behind this, you can start the slides there, James. Is so I've discovered over time that Meaning and purpose are incredibly important in someone's like wanting to attain sort of a life in meaningful, sustainable recovery, right? That we can get jobs and we can follow programs and all that. And I love what was said earlier, incidentally, by somebody about, I think it may have been Caroline, about the both and aspect of recovery, right? Incorporating different aspects from different traditions into the your own recovery to make it as strong as you'd like it to be, right? But so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that the whole idea of the mystical traditions and how the mystical traditions dovetail into or work with recovery. Are they an important component? Are they an essential component? Does it matter at all? You know, that kind of thing. So that's why we like to have these conversations, right? So can we advance the slide? Again, and I would just ask you, I would just ask you to be respectful of each other's time and opinion. You know that we're gonna have some variety of ideas about this stuff, and that some of us feel very strongly about these things. So again, just be generous toward each other for in the interest of making sure that we all get the learning, right? So the objectives of this conversation are going to be to talk about mysticism as a pathway to self-awareness and inner peace. I personally consider self-awareness to be one of the absolutely integral qualities of recovery because my big problem is that I don't have enough space in between stimulus and reaction, right? So the more self-aware I can become, I can assess things in real time and decide what I want to do instead of like having the tail wag the dog and have to deal with the consequences of my decision afterwards, right? So, and that's been a big part of my recovery life, right? Considering yeah, precisely, David, the pause. Consider several different mystical paths and their inherent qualities. Compare and contrast a variety of different mystical practices. Look at the parallels between them and the mechanisms that they provide, and discuss the search for meaning and purpose related to the recovery process and the applicability of mystical elements thereto. I know that that in the recovery process that people are often like urged to they are communicated the importance of having a spiritual aspect or dimension to their recovery. I actually have a whole other webinar that I did some years ago called The God Thing that talks about that whole business of this being a huge stumbling block. I know that when I first came into this process through the 12 step, the 12 step rooms, and I was pretty much told that if I didn't find God in the next 15 minutes, I was screwed. It made me a little nervous, to say the least. It put me on edge, and it turns out that like I've walked this road, with a higher power in my life, with a degree of spirituality in my life, and without. And I can say that the benefits of having a spiritual aspect of my recovery for me have been absolutely like essential, right? So that's one of the reasons why this is just another way to get access to a place where a person can feel secure and loved. And I feel that people feeling safe and valued is probably the most important thing that we can give them when it comes to like trying to help them onto this road of recovery or help them continue down it, right? So the first thing we're going to look at are what they call the Desert Fathers. The Desert Fathers were a group of early, like third, fourth century Christians. Can we see the next slide, James? Um, so Again, sometime between the fourth and fifth centuries, a group of early Christians, and the reason that they abandoned society, as it were, right, to go into the desert, into solitude, is because they were unhappy with the Christianization of the Roman Empire and some of the ways that they were using religion to control the population, right? And of course, we can see this throughout history. These lucky few, these happy few escaped into the deserts to live a simple life based on the worship of God, the work of their hands, and living a simple, humble lifestyle, right? The control of appetite you'll see come up over and over in this thing, right? So it says, they left civilization behind to take up a simple, humble existence in the caves of Egypt, Persia, and Palestine. Their aim was simple, to preserve the true faith in solitude so that they could come back at some point and restore it after it had been co-opted into this sort of political system, right? The vast majority of these people were solitaries living off the work of their hands and living a simple existence devoted entirely to the worship of God and the elimination of all sinful attitudes and behaviors through work, prayer, fasting, and meditation, right? There were also, I should mention that there were these vast monasteries in those days in Nyssa and a couple of other places, and the people who lived there were called Cenobites, and they were living in community and doing more or less the same thing, but not as solitaries. Okay, can we move to the next one, James? So Again, and I'm a huge Thomas Merton guy, and I don't know if you all are familiar with the work of Thomas Merton or not, sort of one of the great spiritual writers of the 20th century, but he spent a lot of time talking about the real self, the true self, and the false self. The self that we create to get out there into the world, you know what I mean? Like our Facebook self, not who we really are inside. And the whole idea behind the whole spiritual aspect of recovery and recovery in general, honestly, and we'll talk about more of this when we get into the Kabbalah, is that the inner self and the true self and the false self becoming integrated. So I no longer feel the need, right, to have this false self that I set up in order to deal with the expectations of the world. I can simply be comfortable being who I am, exactly deliciously who I am, warts and all, right? So the desert wisdom is often characterized by the no-frills approach of devotion and focus on simplicity in all things, right? Their goal is very simple, the discovery of their true self and relationship with the divine and the abandonment of the false or ego-driven self. Their basic philosophy can be summed up in a very few simple things, right? St. Anthony said, whatever you see your soul to desire according to God, do that thing, and you'll keep your heart safe, right? And this other and then the other one at the bottom, like, and then this is a great one, right? So this is like a little anecdote from one of these solitaries, right? To one of the brethren appeared a devil, transformed into an angel of light, who said to him, "I'm the angel Gabriel. I have been sent to thee." But the brother said, "Think again. You must have been sent to somebody else. I haven't done anything to deserve an angel." And the demon disappears. He's like, "I have no idea how to deal with this, right? I have no idea how to deal with this thing, right?" So all of these things are driving toward living a simple existence, devoted simply to greater connection with the divine, the abandonment of all of these sort of things that we add on to ourselves to make ourselves look or feel important, and to just get down to the very simple aspects of living, right? It's so valuable in so many ways. I mean, granted, these people took it to an extreme, but it's so valuable in so many ways to understand that, like, all of these things that we add onto our lives, they can be real distractions that can keep us to getting to the essence of what we're really looking for. I've been down on so many false roads in my quest for, like, wholeness and serenity, that I can tell you that, like, the simpler I've kept it, the more authentic the experience has been. It's just the nature of it for whatever reason. Does anybody have any experience with looking at any of this sort of ancient wisdom or any of that early Christianity? Just curious. It's fascinating stuff. David?
Yeah, I was challenged early on in my life because of my family of origin stuff. And I was a very late reader. I didn't really learn to read until I was 7. And how my parents got me to finally read once we got through Dr. Seuss and the stuff was myths from Greece, Rome, from the old world. And then, of course, we went to church. And I could not deal with church. And it caused me in my later life, in my college life, to get a religion minor and to read like Inanna, Gilgamesh, the Canaanites, Zoroastrianism, and all of these early interpretations of religion and spirituality. And yeah, I've learned a little bit. I've read a little bit.
Cool. It's great stuff. It's super deep. I personally blame Zoroaster for the whole duality thing. It was all unitive until they showed up with the good, bad, right, wrong, black, white. That just messed everything up. We got to get away from that stuff. Anyway, thank you for sharing, David. Robbie.
Yeah, I was brought up Christian by my mom and my dad in my early years, but she became, addicted to substances and unhoused by the time I was 5 or 6. So I kind of resented God, but then I decided I wanted to learn more about it, read the Bible a lot, and I had a lot of questions. And I realized these questions asked even to what I thought were the right people caused a lot of anger, caused a lot of, like, backlash. It wasn't received well. So I kind of backed away from religion through my teen years, and I studied all kinds of other religions, like religious texts, texts written by people of other religions. I wanted to learn about just all of it, just for my own sake. Then I left it alone through my drug use years, late teens into my 30s. And when I found, recovery, I thought to myself, all my spiritual or religious beliefs have been instilled in me by the world one way, shape, or another. And I decided to break it all down and see what, like you said, make it simple. What do I really believe in and what makes sense to me? And it brought me to Gnosticism, through everything I started feeling and believing what I thought was right. And then I found Gnosticism and it changed my life, when I learned about that, which is like the earliest form of Christianity, essentially. And, that's why when people ask me if I affiliate with any religion, I say, no, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Yes, but I don't affiliate with any religion right now. I do not. So that's been where I was to where I am. And now I continue on. I always that's why, again, when I'm here today, I want to hear more and more and more and more always. You never stop learning. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, that beautiful piece of native wisdom that says like the two-leggeds complicate everything, right? That like that way, if you go back even through the 12-step process, if you go back to like what's actually written in the first 164 pages of the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the way that it's interpreted into like the way it's being used today, it's a completely different thing. It's like the telephone game. So to get back to original source reacquaints you with, the love of God, as opposed to all of the trappings that humanity is associated with all this stuff that makes it really hard to embrace, so yeah, original source material is great, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you so much, Rob. Tom.
I think Tom.
There he is.
There we go.
I'm good?
Yes, sir, Tom.
Okay. Hi, John. Nice to see you. I was also an alcoholic addict. I was also raised in the Catholic religion, and just a day or two ago, I found myself in a Bible study group. Don't know why, but I'm open to thinking, understanding, and I think they brought up relevant to what you're talking about is keeping it simple. But there was a third time when Jesus kind of predicted his own death, and his disciples were just didn't know what he was talking about. They were the closest people to him. They were following him, and they still didn't understand what it was. And it just makes me think that, like, in time, all things will be revealed. But as long as that spirituality, that connection, that openness is there, that it will happen. And it's one of those things that came up yesterday, and it really reminded me of that.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and you make a great point. I mean, receptivity is huge too. You know what I mean? I have to position myself to be able to get the knowledge when it comes my way, right? If I'm shut down in some way or closed-minded, I may not get the real gist, like what I'm really been looking for all this time because of my own attitude or whatever it happens to be, my own worldview. Cool. So let's go to I think this is the last one. The next one is the last one on Desert Fathers. Oh no, so we're into the Kabbalah. So great. Thanks for that. And again, you'll see. Well, at the end, we'll draw some parallels between these two things. So anything you have in terms of like questions or comments or whatever, like pile them all up, and we'll start talking about this. And now my subject matter expert on this particular thing, Danielle, will take over. And this fascinates me. So have a listen.
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Shalom. Okay, Kabbalah is the primary form of Jewish mysticism that uses symbols like the 10 Sephirot or emanations that map spiritual connections, and they offer a roadmap for self-transformation, and they enhance addiction recovery. If we can have the next slide. The ultimate purpose in Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism is the perfection of the self. And this focus is going to serve for us as the intersection of Kabbalah and recovery. Kabbalah teaches that creation began with an emanation or outward pouring of the essence of God, known in Kabbalah as Ein Sof, from a state of contraction or Tzimtzum. In the first principle that I want to illuminate here is surrender as Tzimtzum. I was just going over yesterday the first three principles in AA, and I'd like to read them out loud. One is to admit powerlessness and that our lives have become unmanageable. Two is came to believe that a power greater could restore us to sanity. And three, made a decision to turn our lives and wills over to the care of our higher power as we understood them. Now, surrender as Samsung mirrors this Kabbalistic principle of contracting one's ego and self-will to allow for divine guidance. In Kabbalah, there's a principle that the illumination that was spread out all over humanity has become trapped and masked and hidden under shells, which are called klipa. And man's task is to help allow this divine light to return to its essence by removing the shell. And Kabbalah illuminates four separate worlds of creation. And I'm going to read these before turning over to the next slide. There are four worlds of creation and a fifth of Adam Kadmon. These four worlds and the fifth one of transcendence mirror the four stages of recovery and the fifth one of fulfillment. The first olam or world is Asiya. This is the world of action, and this relates to the stage one of recovery known as stabilization. The second world is Yetzirah. Yetzirah is the world of formation, and this relates to stage two of recovery, which is called deepening. And deepening is becoming emotionally tolerant. Pretty much, there's a lot of changes of in your attitude, in your feeling, and in your behavior. The third olam or world is called Beriah. This is the world of creation. And this relates to stage three of recovery called connectedness. And connectedness is where your outer reflects inner. The fourth world is called Atzilut. Atzilut means summit in Hebrew, and this relates to stage four of recovery, which is integration, becoming whole. And the fifth one, the world of Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon in Hebrew is primordial man. This is man at his penultimate illumination when he was created, and he had the closest connection to the divine. Kabbalah relates that man's purpose in life is to relive in through our actions to self-contract our egos, to allow divine guidance and divine light to bring us back to the oneness and to the connection that we had in the beginning when we were first created. All right, the 10 Sefirot. There are three triads in Kabbalah. One that relates to the emotional, the second one that relates to the intellectual, and the third that relates to the instinctual. The 10 Sefirot, I'm going to read them out loud and just translate the Hebrew for you. The first triad, being the intellectual, is Keter, Chokmah, and Bina. That is crown, wisdom, and understanding. The emotional triad is Kesed, Tiferet, and Geruah, which is loving kindness, beauty or harmony, and strength. And the last one, the instinctual triad, is Netzach, Yesod, and Hod. This is perseverance, foundation, and glory. Malkut on the bottom is the kingdom, or it means manifestation. Kabbalah also teaches that individuals can change our destiny by transforming our nature, shifting from a reactive state to a proactive one. The Zohar is the central work of the Jewish mystical tradition, and it's attributed to the 2nd century sage and scholar Rabbi Shimon ben Yarkai, but it was first publicized in the late 13th century, and most scholars actually believe that the publicist Moshe de Leon actually composed the Zohar himself. Anabacoach is an ancient 1st century prayer And this prayer is composed of 7 lines of 6 words relating to a configuration of the divine name. This configuration was taken from the book of Exodus, in the second book of the Bible, in chapter 14, verses 19 through 21. And Kabbalah relates that these 72 names they act as specific keys to spiritual frequencies, and they form what Kabbalah refers to as the ladder of ascension. And they also refer to as a reset button for the soul. Mem He Shen is the frequency or meditation that is specifically related to healing. When one recites the Anabacoac prayer and concentrates on the 3 letters of the divine name Mem He Shen, healing is allowed to illuminate their essence and draw them closer to the divine and closer to the divine state they had when God first created them. Combining Mem He Shen with Anabacoac acts as a shield of divine force that surrounds the name, ensuring energy flows without obstruction. Together, they create a unified field of healing that allows focus on untying negativity, illness, addiction, and allows you to replace them with the glow of Kabbalah. There are many different, I just wrote down a couple of the names here of these 72. They pretty much allow the meditator to dispose of eliminating negative thoughts, diffusing negative energy, dumping depression, speaking the right name, global transformation, appreciation, and lastly, victory over addictions. I thought that one was specifically auspicious concerning the business, the joy of recovery that we're involved with. And if anyone has any experience with Kabbalah, I throw it out to you guys. I like to hear what, if any, experience you've had with Kabbalah, and to what extent. Anyone? David?
It's these pearls that always keep on happening. In my study, in my religion study, I fell in love, and I haven't done enough searching and reading about Kabbalah, and specifically the Zohar. But oh my God, what I find just unbelievably, it like hits like at a solar level when you start understanding how Hebrew works as a language, and you understand the power of numbers and their interconnection with life and how our paths move and everything. It's just, I don't have words, but in my limited exploration, I know that there are things that I want to learn in there. And one of the craziest ones that has cropped up in my life through my writing, because I write poetry and stuff, prose, and trying to work out my connection with the divine source, my connection with human beings and everything, is the word abracadabra. And I have like 4 poems about this word and our power. And it starts with a sound. And then we connect these sounds. It makes a vibration. It goes out into the world. And when I say abracadabra, what I say becomes. And think about the recovery process. On a daily basis, I need to say, Do with me what you wish. On a daily basis, my repair, I have to say, I am enough. I am loved. I repeat these words. And when we connect these words and we have agreement of what these words mean, every time I speak, I am invoking my will and my desire upon the world and the people around me. And if I'm doing that from a place of kindness and compassion, it is unbelievably powerful. And oh, my art and my writing have all focused around mysticism, and I am now even more blown away with the Kabbalah and seeing these direct connections and revelations. In my Dharma recovery, it's the same thing. It's like these mystics, these people who focused on dealing with this physical body, this meat puppet, and trying to reconnect to the source. I don't understand why we yeah, I do understand, but we are so lost and we have so far to go, and it would be beautiful if people would actually start letting go of the names and just focus on that thing inside you that is part of the divine. That, I mean, think about astronomy. You go to a planetarium, and one of the first things they tell you is you are made up from the particles and the atoms from dying stars. If that doesn't tell you you are connected to the fucking divine, no brick ever will. And when you understand that that is in you and you have a direct connection to this, you don't need a pope to interpret for you what God's will is.
Yeah, thanks, David. We've got to keep it moving though, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
All really deep stuff, and we could go on, obviously this could be days long, but but we haven't got days. We got another hour, so let's do the rest of this now. All right, so shifting gears now from the Hebrew tradition to the Islamic tradition of mysticism, we look at the idea of Sufism, right? And Sufism isn't a separate sect within Islam, but it's a path that follows the way of mystical love, knowledge, and devotion to God. And again, much like the early Christians, the Desert Fathers, there were certain people who were very pious who became disaffected with some of the ways that they felt that the faith was being diluted with different schools and different sects and different ideas, right? So they took on this different mystical commitment, right? That they would, spend their time again trying to live a life of simplicity and humility and service to others, which is a big part of their whole thing, And it's said that the term Sufism comes from the word suf, which is the wool that some of their caftans, some of their long robes are made out of, right? So can you move to the next slide, James? I love this prayer at the top, which says a lot to me about the purpose behind, our spiritual or mystical traditions, right? Oh God, if I worship you out of fear of hell, then burn me in hell. If I worship you in hope of paradise, then exclude me from paradise. But if I worship you for yourself alone, then deny me not your eternal beauty, right? So again, it's the whole dispelling the idea of there being a worthiness contest to get into heaven, right? Or there being any of this business that it's really strictly for the love of God and for mankind that we get involved in this whole spiritual practice to start with, right? And Sufism can look very different depending on what part of the world you're in, what school you're following, because generally the schools of Sufism are very closely linked to the beliefs of the person who founded the school. So the adherents would have different ways of looking at it depending on how the person interprets the Quran and their mystical practice, right? But usually it starts with there are stations, much like you talk about the 10 Sephiro or the 12 steps or the stations of the cross or the Eight Noble Truths of Buddhism, the Eightfold Path, whatever. They all seem to have the same basic tenets, right? So we're talking about the Maqamat of Sufism, which identifies psychological and ethical qualities needed to advance on the path. And usually starts with repentance, but it has to do with like self-denial and control of the appetite and other-centeredness and all of that stuff, right? And so it says, you know, the path of the Sufi mystic, prayer, contemplation, devotional practice seems to embody qualities like honesty, generosity, humility, patience, gratitude, beneficence, contentment, and joy, and to abandon egoistic pursuits like greed, lust, and vanity. The practice has the goal of mystical unity with the divine. And again, I hope you're beginning to see, even with all of sort of the recovery pathways you can think of, that these qualities, these core values are they transcend any one particular thought pattern, right? That they're universal, and certainly for people who are looking to do any kind of personal growth, you know, or spiritual development, these qualities are really important to be able to manifest. So by offering these several different ways of looking at it, hopefully there's something that everybody can grab onto and be like, this is something that I can use in order to help me develop in the area that I'm looking to develop. While many of us have heard about or seen the whirling dervishes, I'm sure we've all seen photographs of these people in this incredible sort of majestic dance that they do in worship to God, right? That there's a big parallel there between that and kind of the yogic tradition, right? Where we're splitting the attention. I don't know if any of you are meditators, but I know that in my own practice that it was very difficult at the beginning for me to simply sit still, and that by using a practice that divided my attention, in other words, I had to focus on some physical movement or holding some position or something like that, while trying to focus on the breath, you know, that it happened to clear out all the chatter in my mind and made it much easier for me to access the divine, to have that empty space where I was able to really receive what I wanted to receive, right? And so the whirling is another form of this divided attention, right? The same as holding, you know, sun salutation or wherever it would happen to be in a yogic practice. Because I'm busy trying to focus on several things at once, it helps to clear all of this sort of extraneous chatter out of my head and gives me sort of a clear landing strip for all of the information that I'm looking to access from the divine, right? And so that's the idea behind this, right? And like, while the meditative aspect of Sufism is expected, it's integral to the whole practice. You don't necessarily have to be a dervish in order to access it, right? So I don't need to be a yoga master in order to meditate, but sometimes finding access, it helps to divide the attention like that. So that's essentially that one. Any other questions around the idea of Sufism before we move into the next piece? Okay.
Hey, Native American spiritual practice, mystical practice. Native American tradition is very closely tied to mystical practice, embracing the idea that 5% of the world is seen and 95% unseen. Native spirituality is about healing, purification, and intimate connection to the Creator. While some practices were banned by the U.S. government, such as ghost dance, some forms of Native religion, those practices survived by going underground in order to preserve time-honored tradition. Many of the rituals and ceremonies associated with Native mysticism involve the creation of a trance-like state in order to better experience the divine and to be able to see into the spirit world. All told, the Native mystic seeks greater wisdom and understanding of the cycles of life and deeper connection with the Creator. This relationship guides the individual into an other-centered way of being suffused with humility, gratitude, and simplicity. The blue,
I can understand.
You know how they send the heart and raise their hand and stuff like that?
Okay, I thought that was someone saying something. The blue or spirit road lies behind everything that we can see or touch. Native ritual in general seeks an interface between the red and blue roads in order to produce harmony and understanding. Can we have the next slide, please? Pipe ceremony. North American Native tradition is steeped in symbolism and personal sacrifice. Through subjecting the physical body to various stressors, the mind gains access to contemplative states which aid the pursuit of greater connection with universal wisdom and ancient tradition. Pipe ceremony. The sacred pipe plays a key role in the spiritual and cultural vitality of many Native American peoples. Each part of the pipe, stem and bowl, tobacco, breath, and smoke, is symbolic of fundamental relationships that keep the cosmos in motion. In ceremonies, numerous pinches of tobacco mark prayers for blessings on behalf of each part of creation. Lit by the fire of the Great Spirit, inhaled and exhaled as smoke, the prayers become visible offerings. The sweat lodge of Native Americans consists of a lashed structure of bent poles covered with blankets, hides, or tarps to hold in the heat, which is provided by hot stones that are brought into the lodge. The prayer offered by those who enter the lodge is accompanied by pouring water over the stones. The rites of the steamy sweat lodge are undertaken for purification, healing, and well-being. In one form or another, the sweat lodge is part of the life of many Native peoples of North America, from Alaska to the Great Plains and to the eastern woodlands. Among Native Americans, vision quests are a common means of establishing contact with the spirit world and seeking the guidance of a special manifestation of the divine power. This quest is often associated with coming to adulthood, though it may take place anytime one needs spiritual discernment. After preliminary rites of purification, one would go to an isolated place, especially one of the many sacred places associated with vision quests, such as the Black Hills in South Dakota or the Medicine Wheel in the Bighorn Mountains of Montana. The 3 or 4 day ordeal includes fasting and prayer, all the while alert to the signs in the dreams through which a vision is revealed. Last, we have the sun dance. The sun dance is a ceremony of purification and renewal widely practiced among Native American Plains tribes. Although the various rites often described by the term differ from one another in many significant ways, they all include a rigorous marathon of dancing oriented around a center pole in a lodge especially constructed for the 3 or 4 days of the sun dance. Also common to the dance ceremonies are acts of self-mortification and fasting, often accompanied by powerful visionary experiences. Such rites are said to help replenish the creation, renew spiritual vitality of the participating group, and benefit humankind as a whole. Next slide. Okay. Do we have any questions or comments about Native American mysticism? Does anyone have experience going into a sweat lodge or?
Yeah, and before we move on, I just wanted to point out that one of the first organized recovery movements in North America was started by a guy named Handsome Lake, who was an Iroquois who had a vision. He was on the losing side of the French and Indian War, and he was on the verge of death. They had moved him into his daughter's longhouse to expire, and he had this vision where three elders came to him and said, "We will save you, but you have to go out and share the message that they have to your people have to get away from the mind changer, which is alcohol, right? And return to traditional ways, traditional practices, traditional ritual." And they had at that point, at that time in history, more than like 10,000 adherents to the Handsome Lake movement. So it was a very powerful recovery movement way back in like the 17th century. So there's that. Cool. Deb?
Hi. Yeah, so I've done a few sweats. I have a few friends of mine that are Native American, and I've done a couple different sweats. And I do believe it in the spirituality of it, and the clarification and the purification of it. It's kind of, I know it's different than like basically what I consider my walk with Christ, but being a part of nature is one of the things that I actually it's some of the things that actually will relieve me. Even the way the sun shines. I mean, I can share that some people have actually witnessed it, like when I'm having a conversation with the Lord, and the sun will change. It'll beam, like it can be in gray, but my atmosphere will light. That kind of stuff. So that is a part of me, and having that sense of balance, meditation, those types of things, being in nature, water is huge for me. So I believe that God speaks to us in many different forms, and I believe in the word where it says, we're not, we're in His image, and we're not. The world will tell us that we're not basically unique. But in the word, it will tell you you are absolutely unique. There's only one of you made. So I don't know. I believe in that, and I believe in the combination of it, and I've done it, and I want to do it again. So yeah,
That's
I
great.
think it's
That's
important.
beautiful. And it speaks to that whole idea, like in the fifth stage of recovery, of being both precious and insignificant at the same
At
time,
the
right?
same
Like
time.
that I'm only one, but I am one. And the things that I can do, only I can do. There are certain things that only I can do in a very specific way, which is why I've gotten the grace to be here. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I can't let that, make me the great I am, because once I become the great I am, then I'm in all kinds of trouble. You know what I mean? And it's hard to get out of it. Michelle, how about you?
Yeah, don't really have anything to share, but this is absolutely fascinating. But I was just wondering, the four ceremonies, do they typically go in order, or you can do that at different times? The pipe, the sweat, the vision, would they like?
Oh no,
Do you have to do them in order?
they're separate. They aren't usually done in sequence at all. Different groups have different traditions that they do at different times of
Okay.
year. They're often the vision quest is a rite of passage from youth to adulthood, but not always. So it just depends. The sun dance is usually something that happens in the Great Plains in the summertime. You know.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Jeff.
I just thought I'd finally participate for once.
Woo! There
I
we
love
go.
listening to you guys. You guys are so fluid and you can just roll into everything. And I love what you said about the I am, but I kind of think of it as like, I'm not the ocean. I'm just a wave, so I'm part of the ocean,
All right.
And when I first got recovered and I was going through the big book, it said like this is the only beginning. So then I'm like, all right, well, where do I go from here? And I kind of dabbled a little bit with all of these things that we're talking about to see which resonated or to see where I was being nudged the most. And I got nudged into a sweat lodge at one point, and I remember I went in there with about 15 people, and they closed the doors and they did the prayers and the drumming, and they threw a couple more rocks in there, and it got so hot that like three or four people like got up and got out. Now my ego was so strong that I couldn't like come across as being weak. And I was like, I will die in this sweat lodge before I get up and look like not tough enough. And then as I continued to go through there, I realized that that was my problem. And that's what I was there to let go of. And through it all, through the pain, through the suffering, through the sacrifice of the flesh, like I kind of felt like I walked out of there reborn, understanding that like that's like what's been leading me this long. And that's what I was there to let go of. So I thought it was a pretty amazing experience. And if anyone gets the chance to do it, yeah, it's life changing.
That's fascinating. That's great stuff. And it reminds me so much of like my sponsorship family and I went on retreat like 10 years in a row. And after the first year when I was just a complete buffalo and had no idea what I was even doing there, I went with a specific idea of what I wanted to find out or learn or connect or whatever like that. And the teaching of the retreat was just to pay attention to what was going to happen, because it was never what I wanted, but it was always something very valuable, right? It's really about receptivity. Like my old man used to say, it could be raining silver dollars out in the street and somebody be out there with a pitchfork trying to pick them up, right? I have to position myself so that I can actually receive this valuable information as I'm getting it. It's being given to me, it's being offered to me all the time by the universe. It's all a question of, can I position myself in such a way that I'm going to receive it instead of let it bounce off my pride or my ego or my fear or whatever it happens to bounce off of, which is why this.
Honestly,
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Honestly, that's kind of what these classes have been like too. Like I go into it with this mindset of what it's going to be like, and then I just get open to this whole new world of ideas and beliefs from all these different people. And I get exactly not what I was expecting, but exactly what I needed.
Yeah, it's fascinating how that all works. That's the universe, man. If I'm putting the good stuff out, I get the good stuff back. I have learned one thing for sure. If I do the work, I get the results every time. That's guaranteed. And then there are a lot of times I don't want to do the work, but I'm like, man, do you want the results or not? How free do you want to be, right? How free do you want to be? Caroline.
Hey guys.
Hi,
So it's
Karen.
just it's I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but I love the commonality that is already like showing up between the different religions. And I was thinking about, I've done a sweat lodge, I meditate. I consider myself more of a Buddhist, but I'm open to anything. I don't know, have all the answers. But I was just thinking about, I love to dance and I love to go to concerts, and went to a concert recently, and I was just into it, like in the music and dancing, and it felt like I was floating. I was sober. I was like almost like an out of body thing that just kind of hit home when I was thinking about these things that like that I do um that I've been doing my whole life, like some of the and so I just wanted to I found that interesting.
That's good. It is. It's fascinating, and the whole business of being in the flow state, like
Mhm.
there's a flow state that each of us gets into, and when we're doing specific things that really connect with our soul, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
When I play music, I'm in my flow state. When I facilitate trainings, I'm in my flow state because I
Mhm.
love sharing knowledge with people, right? And my
Yeah.
wife is the only one who ever points this. I never notice it, but she's like, "Oh my God, you're really flowing there." But that's right. But the thing is that again, this is one of the great things about recovery is that I would never even have encountered half of the things that give me the great joy in my life if I hadn't wound up saddled with this affliction. When I used to hear these people say to me, "Oh, grateful, recovering," going, please. You know what I mean? But now I get it. I totally get it. I totally get it. So thanks for sharing. All right, so let's go now from the Middle East into the Orient, right? We're talking about the Tao, right? The idea of the Tao, right? And the Tao is a very simple statement, right? Virtue is a state of being that manifests when discipline is no longer an exercise of control but an extension of wisdom. Right? In other words, I'm not white knuckling my way into this humble existence. I understand that it's if I want the full value of being a human on this planet, that this is the way I need to live. Right? So it's a very different, right? A very different thing, right? The logic of science tells us the universe is billions of years old, alongside the capacity for reasoning and logic. There's a flower within the psyche, right? That when blossoming dispels the mind and its ordinary function of logic, right? It's perhaps the focus of intuition and insight that this flower exists with and within the flower of logic. The wise application of both forces moves humanity forward, right? So it's wisdom and logic. Going to move to the next one, and I'm going to try not to repeat myself because I have the same thing written down here that I just read to you. Right? But I mean, almost all mystics throughout history have had one thing in common. They manifested a high level of virtue in their lives, right? Um, and the idea is to cultivate oneself through the Taoist teaching. You have to heed three basic principles. Simplicity by living simply and not craving. However, one must not crave simplicity because that's a craving, right? It should be an organic process, right? That I discover that by doing these things, by living in this way, that I'm being rewarded in a way that fills me, right? It's not something that I'm forcing myself into austerity because I need to be punished. Right? And the idea of harmony by respecting and being open to others, finding moderation in excesses, and understanding the cycles of activity and rest, right? Not pouring from an empty cup. Non-aggression by recognizing the roots and limitations of anger and competition, not harming others or oneself, not manipulating others or deceiving oneself. It's funny. I have a friend. Yeah, that is funny, right? I have a but I have a friend who's a monk who lives down in Berryville, Virginia. And I was talking to him. I have great interest because I read a lot of Thomas Merton. I have great interest in St. John of the Cross, St. Jean de Croix. And so I'm in the bookstore talking to my friend about this, that, and the other thing, and picking up books, putting them down. I buy a book that I think is about St. John of the Cross, and I go home and I realize that I didn't buy that book at all, that I bought a completely different book called The Little Way of St. Therese of Lisieux, this little French lady who died of tuberculosis at like 28 years old, right? So I'm like, what is this about? So in the mail, I get a book, the foreword of which was written by the head of the novitiate at my friend's monastery, and the book is called Prayer and Temperament. And this book is designed to help you find the form of prayer that's appropriate for you based on your temperament, right? So I read the thing. It's kind of like the Myers-Briggs for praying. I read this thing and I'm looking up and I'm like, okay, I'm an INFJ and blah, blah, blah. I'm turbulent and my prayer is going to be conversational because I don't go for the, the rosary or whatever, whatever, right? And it says you want to look at Augustinian prayer and the little way of Saint Therese of Lisieux. Coincidence? I own this book, right? And it turns out that the little way of Saint Therese of Lisieux, and the only reason I'm bringing this up, right, is because this whole idea of non-aggression, the basic tenet of her work is this: the elimination of the three forms of violence: the violence we do to ourselves, the violence we do to each other, and the violence that's done to us. But most importantly, the violence that we do to ourselves. Right? My 12-step sponsor told me that if I had a pet and I treated it the way I treated myself, that I could get arrested. Right. So this is something that I need to look at, and it was given to me, a free gift from the universe. Oh, look, the book is right here. Fascinating, right? But yeah, I mean, this whole idea of non-aggression, of not manipulating others for our own personal gain, about, not taking advantage of people, all this stuff. This is all part of having the servant's heart. It really is. So now we're moving into the idea of Buddhism, right? And unlike other traditions which may or may not include a mystical element, all Buddhists are expected to observe and follow a certain degree of asceticism, which follows either the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Paths of the Buddha. Practices within Buddhist mystical groups can vary, but often rely on chanting, meditation, split concentration in the form of yogic postures or tantric work, and the giving of alms. So in the Buddhist world, it's all about non-aggression and all about unit of consciousness and all of that business. And let's just take a look at the Eightfold Path. So, I had all those cool little animations put in there, and they're not there anymore. I put a lot of effort into that, James. At any rate, the idea of the Eightfold Path, right view, opening the eye of knowledge. Now, look, how many other things have we talked about, right? The first of the 10 Sephirot, right? The same thing. The idea of opening the eye so that the wisdom can come in, to give us what we need in order to go forward. Opening the eye of knowledge, right resolve to live humbly and with intent, right speech, no lying, shaming, verbal violence, or idle chatter. Right conduct, do no harm. Right livelihood, no trading on the misery of others. Does that mean I have to sell my package store? I'm just curious, right? Right. I actually know a guy in AA who owns liquor stores. That's what he does for a living. And I'm like, I personally would have an issue with that, but he's like, listen, I just because I can't drink don't mean, everybody else can't. Whatever. Right, no trading on the misery of others, right effort, practice restraint and the denial of ego. Have you ever heard of the Pioneer Total Abstinence Association? This is a complete non sequitur, right? The Pioneer Total Abstinence Association is based in Ireland, and when they talk about somebody taking the pledge, that's what they mean. It's the Pioneer Pledge, right? Matt Talbot is the patron saint of Irish drunks, and he had a confessor, and he was big on the Pioneer prayer and the Pioneer prayer, which if you want to be a member of the Pioneer Total Abstinence Association, needs to be recited twice a day, is relatively simple. It's for thy greater glory and consolation, O Sacred Heart of Jesus, for thy sake, to give good example, to practice self-denial, to make reparation to thee for the sins of intemperance and for the conversion of excessive drinkers. I will abstain for life from all intoxicating drink. But the pivotal part for me is to practice self-denial in the same way as in the third step prayer out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The big phrase for me, right, is relieve me of the bondage of self. please. And 90 times a day sometimes, but that's what it is for me because my whole existence on this planet is predicated on my being other-centered. If I get wrapped around the axle with my own ego, I'm not going to be able to help anybody. I'm going to look out the window and think that the world is a terrible place. That traditionally, that historically, that's how it's worked for me. So this whole idea, these premises, these ideas are really important in my being able to live the life that I want to live. Now, Caroline, you say you're primarily predominantly identify as a Buddhist. What can you tell me about the way that it's helped you in your recovery and in your life?
So I practice and I actually bring a recovery Dharma meeting to I also work at a sober living house and I run a recovery Dharma meeting at the women's house and at the men's house as well. And it's just it really and now I incorporate it with NA and other things, but it's impacted every aspect of my life and it's informed every aspect of my life, trying to understanding that, more craving leads to more suffering. So the four noble truths are like, ultimately you want less craving and we will have less suffering. And then living by this Eightfold Path, I am very far from perfect, but just trying to be mindful, sitting in meditation, although I also like what you said about the meditating and moving, walking meditations, anything like that. It has helped me. I was also thinking about Siddhartha, to be honest with you. I don't know if you all have read that book or, but how he sort of left his society and to go off. And it seems like that's been a common theme throughout that, there was he himself did. And then he never intended for Buddhism to be a religion, but, so I don't really call myself a Buddhist, but it just, I was raised Catholic and Buddhism just speaks to my heart more. I can internalize it easier. I like that it doesn't ask us to believe in anything other than our own, compassion and our own ability to grow, and that we have the answers within us. And there's something greater than us, of course. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
I don't know, but it was fabulous. So who cares?
Okay.
And look at the Buddha himself. He was born a prince. He was born a prince, and when he became acquainted with the suffering in the world, his primary move was, I need to do something about this, right? And not everybody is of that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of right from the beginning of this class too. Just it was reminding me of the story of Siddhartha and how he, and suppose there is a belief that the Buddha actually hired somebody else to replace him, and he actually went off and lived like alongside a stream in just, sorry, my dog is barking. But I just find it fascinating too. So thanks for calling on me.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. Thank you for everything you brought. Thank you for everything you brought today, man. It's great. It's great stuff. All right, so now we've seen a variety of different things. So let's look at the next slide. So again, and this is sort of what we're driving at here, that mystic tradition doesn't necessarily ignore the tenets of the faith it's associated with so much as it sets dogmatic systems aside in favor of a simple existence devoted to cultivating a pure spirit, a generous heart, and a close alignment with the divine. The recovery process often initiates a search for meaning or purpose, and that search often leaves people feeling as if they're spiritually lacking. Each of these ideas can become frameworks from which the individual can begin the journey towards spiritual fulfillment. Humble and altruistic living and freedom from self-consciousness and worry. These traditions have existed by and large for over 1,000 years and have been used as markers on the vast highway to peace and understanding for all of this time. So why wouldn't we want to know more about them and take better advantage of those things, right? Global mystic tradition is as fascinating as it is various, yet all the traditions we've looked at today have some pretty clear commonalities, namely the foregoing or abandonment of the false or ego-driven self and all things egotistical, periods of contemplative prayer and meditation in order to align oneself more closely to the divine and to acquire strength and wisdom, deep and abiding concern for the health and safety of others, to increase harmony and coexistence, to become self-possessed to the extent that one can operate without the constraints of how the world views them, right? To be unfettered by what I think the world's expectations are of me, right? So I can go and live precisely as who I am. And then we have some resource information. Oh, so here's some of the things that drove this whole workshop, right? How many times along the road to recovery and freedom do we ask ourselves questions like, is this all there is? I was really, really stuck in my own recovery about 6, 7 years in, and the universe took care of me the way the universe always takes care of me. A guy shows up at one of my meetings and says, I just got hired to manage this recovery community center on Weathersfield Avenue in Hartford, and I need volunteers, right? And me, with my habitually low self-esteem, like, I'm like, I'll do anything for a pat on the back, having no idea what this man offered me, right? And I step into my first CCAR Recovery Community Center. My mind is completely blown. I've found no place more powerful to be, and I just begged them to keep me, and I'm still here. So, right? So, but I mean, there are definitely times when we're feeling stagnant in recovery, and it's like, okay, we've been doing 90 meetings in 90 days for God knows how long, and like, and where am I going? Where is this spiritual awakening? What am I doing with this knowledge I'm acquiring? How am I applying what I'm doing to the rest of my life? There's so many questions, so many questions, right? Why am I frightened of everything? When I took that filter off of substances, the world was a very bright, shiny, and sort of like not hospitable place. And my spiritual practice has really helped me become a lot more comfortable in my own skin and operating in the world. I really don't know at this point where I would be without it. You know what I mean? Right? What kind of a person am I really? Am I the broken piece of garbage that my father told me was my whole life? Am I like the manipulative sort of, idiot that I was when I was using? Am I the father and husband that I'd like to be? Am I the creative I don't know. I'm so confused because I've worn so many hats during the course of my life, particularly during my active addiction, that I just don't really know, But at the end of the day, right? God don't make junk. Never has, never will,
No,
right?
doesn't.
I'm the problem here, right? So maybe if I can make my connection a little bit stronger, I can actually internalize that forgiveness, that universal love, right? That unrequited that love that comes to me without any kind of strings attached to it, right? But if I'm not and I'm shut off, I may be operating in my own spin forever, and that's not going to help me very much if I'm trying to make something out of my life, right? How can I turn my choices around? Right? I made so many decisions in my life based on fear, right? Based on arrogance, based on pride, not based on love, not based on understanding, not based on altruism, none of that stuff, right? Like again, these foundations give me the opportunity to act in the way that I really want to act. Right? But things that have been mystifying me for a long time in terms of how to go about it, right? So I would argue that each of these ideas offer someone an entry point to a world that's going to satisfy them in a way that they have not been satisfied before, and like everything else having to do with recovery, there's certainly no harm in trying something different. Having tried all the things that we tried that didn't work out for us. I mean, when I was trying to turn the addiction thing around, man, I read every book, I saw every movie, I stood on my head in the corner. I did anything anybody would have told me to do, except put the substances down. I had a perfect working understanding. I could have read how it works to you from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous from memory. But I did, but I was afraid to stop. I was afraid to stop using. It was as simple as that. I was afraid of what the world was going to look like on the other side of that. And I needed some kind of like real reassurance that if I was going to do this thing, that I wasn't going to be doing it on my own. You know what I mean? And I was very fortunate in the fact that I fell into a group of some incredibly kind and generous and patient strangers who supported me so that I could get to the place where I could, I could actually not be so afraid, that I could actually put the drugs down and try and figure out what I wanted, who I really was and what I wanted from life, right? And I would argue that having this degree of reassurance could be really helpful. There it is, the God-shaped hole. There it is. Yeah, and filling it with everything I could
There
possibly
it
need.
goes.
You know what I mean? And even after I stopped using in recovery, I was on the run from the beast. I developed every process addiction you could possibly imagine, gambling and sex and spending money and workaholism and the whole thing. I was just running from the beast in recovery. You know what I mean? So the whole spiritual thing has really given me a great deal of insight into sort of how I tick and how I can be connected and how I can really make a difference in the world and not be hampered by my own fears and my own ego. Super important. And there should be another slide with resources, maybe? I don't really know. So when we feel stuck, trapped, or alone, I guess this is pretty much what I've been ad-libbing for the last couple of minutes, right? Having a practice which reinforces trust, accountability, and self-possession can be incredibly useful. And since all these systems produce the same result, i.e., greater self-awareness, humility, connection to the divine, it's really a matter of which system an individual gravitates toward in order to embrace its core principles rather than whether something like that is helpful or not, right? So I would just ask if that you take the time to explore this, that maybe you use some of this information in working with some of the people you're trying to support who are still floundering around in that business of spiritual, not spiritual, religious, spiritual, God, not God, like higher power, not higher power, because these things can really come in handy, if someone is looking to find their way through that to wind a way out of there, right?
Yes.
Super. So that's that, and then we've got a slide of some resources. And again, I will put my information in the chat as well. If you're looking for any more information or any of the books that we use or any of that stuff, feel free, and I'd be happy to send it to you going forward. All right, so there's some stuff, and we can get you the slide deck if you want it. I'm sure if that's not going to be an issue. Yeah. So at this point, we're open to entertain any questions, comments, concerns, epiphanies, thoughts.
I love what you said, John. Um, you know, and if I could, you know what, there was an added, I had to look it up yesterday, because I remembered that there was another parallelism between the stages of recovery and Kabbalah, and I found it. Okay, so in the um in the fifth um stage of recovery, there is, where is it? I just had it here. Give me 1 second, because I thought this was just so neat.
There's so many. I mean, I love the way the Kabbalah dovetails into the five stages of recovery. I think, and I put in the chat earlier how it also talks about like the three centers of intelligence, much in the same way as the Enneagram does, right? The heart center, the feeling center, the
Yes.
intellect center, and the gut center.
Okay, yes. All right. So this was it. There was a statement and it said, in stage 5, fulfillment, being precious and insignificant simultaneously, right? So in doing a lot of research, in Kabbalah, on this fifth stage of Adam Kadmon or primordial man, this stage of transcendence, um, there there was a definition of humility of kingship. If you remember the slide that had the Sephira, the tree of Sephira on it, at the top was Keter or crown, and at the bottom was Malkut, also known as foundation. But in Hebrew, the word Malkut means kingship. It actually means kingdom. And the fifth state of man, that we're supposed to strive for in order to become closer to the divine. This state of Adam Kadmon is known as Keter in Malkut, or crown in humility. It's having two states at the same time, or exaltedness in state of humility. And I thought that was really, really neat, because the having the definition of the fifth stage as of being simultaneous, or being in two states, and having the fifth world defined as being in humility and having and possessing a state of exaltedness at the same time. This was something that I was only able to reach when I entered recovery. And part of the reason it took me 6.5 years I spent with a fentanyl dependency was because I didn't feel worthy. My self-esteem was so low. I couldn't imagine being extricated from it. I couldn't see a way ahead. And so I love the way that that parallels, and especially, and I learned so much doing this with you. I just want to thank you, John, for the opportunity, and everybody that came here today. Being able just to be at one, and have communion with people who are in recovery without the use of drugs or alcohol is absolutely amazing. And it blows me away each and every day. I love all of you. God bless you. I'm open to questions.
Yeah, thank you. And one of my friends from the rooms, he's always like, you know how in the Roadrunner cartoons, how the coyote can run in the air for, it's like that's what recovery is like. It's like you're kind of running in the air, and
Absolutely.
yeah. But again, and the other one of my favorite ones is that scene from the Indiana Jones movie called, like, The Path of God, where
Oh, yeah.
there's no visible path, and he throws the dirt, and
The last
and
one.
my theory behind that is, like, the path only really appears for you where you no longer feel the need to throw the dirt,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
There it is. But again, thank you all so much for being here. I really, this is a bunch of information that was just like busting to get out of me. So I hope that you got something out of it, because I found the stuff absolutely fascinating. I really do. And very applicable to the recovery process. So there you have it.